We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Welcome to today's episode of the Energy Impact Podcast. I am your host, Adam Zuckerman, and we have a wonderful guest today, John Powers, Vice President, Global Cleantech and Renewables at Schneider Electric. John, it's great to have you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Let's hop right in. You're a LEED accredited professional. You have a BSc in mechanical engineering from Duke. I don't know if that's okay because I grew up in Maryland, but we can talk about that later. You are an expert, and when I say expert, I mean globally renowned in renewable energy and power purchase agreements, which are PPAs, markets across the world, US, European, Australian, Indian, Mexican, you name it. How the heck did you get to where you are today?
Well, it was a journey of passion, really. So I think I figured out shortly after graduating from college that I wanted to work in renewable energy. I cared deeply about sustainability. The energy system was a place where there was a lot of transition that needed to happen, especially as I was starting out in 2002, 2003. So once I knew I wanted to work in renewable energy, it became easy. You just focus on that. You go after those types of jobs. I found a cool little startup company called Renewable Choice Energy out of Boulder, Colorado, joined on with them. And 18 years later, acquired by Schneider Electric 4.5 years ago, and here we are. So it's been an awesome journey, but really just, I knew it was what I wanted to do, where I wanted to contribute to the planet and put all those working hours you put in, towards something positive. So that was really the driver, yeah.
All right, so you're a mission-driven individual, and it's interesting that big companies in the world can attract and hold on to talent like yourself. Schneider Electric, for people that aren't familiar, is a fairly sizable company. It's a $90 billion market cap. It's 140,000 employees. You're operating in more than 100 companies, but there's levels to it. Can you take us at the top of how Schneider Electric then has the Energy and Sustainable Services division, and then below that, the division that you're currently running?
Happy to, yeah, for sure. So a lot of listeners will know Schneider Electric as, a global leader in digitization, the energy space, technology, software solutions for the energy market globally. As you say, I think we've got employees in 120 plus countries around the world. So within that, where I sit is within the Energy and Sustainability Services division within Schneider. Mm-hmm. And so what our mission is to help advise corporate and industrial clients as an independent third-party advisor on all things energy and sustainability related. So we're actually the largest company in the world doing this. We manage about 30 billion euros in annual electricity and gas spend on behalf of our customers. Mm-hmm. And then within that organization, something that's been growing, as we all know, for the last decade plus, is interest in renewable energy, sustainability, decarbonization. So, within the Energy and Sustainability Services group focused on all things energy, I help lead the group that really focuses on renewable energy, decarbonization, sustainability solutions for customers. Mm-hmm. So we act as an independent third-party advisor to many of the biggest companies in the world on how do I hit my renewable energy target? How do I set a renewable energy target? How do I figure out how to set and hit a science-based target, right? I want to get to net zero carbon. I want to get to 100% renewable. How am I going to get there? And then we actually help them execute and get there and manage that position over time.
And you guys have been tremendously successful with this. There's more than 140 PPAs. And I read a stat that might be even higher than this now, that you've helped with over 10,000 megawatts of new wind and solar. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, in the offsite power purchase agreement space, we've advised and give credit to our customers. They're the ones who signed the deals, but we've acted as a third-party advisor on behalf of our corporate clients on over 10 gigawatts, over 10,000 megawatts of offsite corporate PPAs. Add to that, millions of megawatt hours of renewable energy credits, carbon offsets, and on-site solutions as well.
All right, let's talk about that. So we've got listeners at all different levels across the world. What is an offsite PPA and how does it play into credits? And most people, when they're just getting started, they imagine, okay, it's just the source of the energy, it's where I'm buying it from, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And I imagine that's what your energy buyers and advisors help with. If I'm a new customer and I'm coming to you and go, hey, you know what? I only have dirty energy. I'm sourcing, I don't know, let's say 1,000 megawatt hours a year. Not massive, but fairly sizable. Walk me through the process. Like, what are you trying to help them understand?
Yeah, so first we'll take a look at, what are their goals? Okay, you're trying to get to 100% renewable. What markets are you in around the world? We've got the Energy and Sustainability Services team. We have people in over 40 different countries around the world. So understanding where is your load, what are the options there? And if you're looking to get into renewables, there's 3 typical ways you can engage in renewables. One is on-site. So if you've got good resources, if it makes sense financially, if you've got roof space or land near your facility, maybe you can do an on-site solar panels or an on-site microgrid, some kind of on-site solution. If the next step up, or if you want to get a little bit bigger, is procuring energy just off the normal power grid. Like from a utility, you get it into your buildings like you normally do, your factories, but can you control where that energy is generated from at the outset? And so that's what we call an offsite power purchase agreement. And it's where you're actually buying the electricity as well as the renewable energy credits from a large scale wind or solar facility. Often for our clients, they want to look at new build facilities where they say, I'm willing to sign a 10-year agreement for a 12-year, 15-year agreement from a large scale offsite wind farm that's just set to be built, so that I can say my contract, my impact allowed that project to get financed and built. So that's the offsite power purchase agreement.
Okay.
And then the third way is you can purchase renewable energy credits. Energy attribute certificates is the more generic term, where they're guarantees of origin in Europe, LGCs in Australia, IREX, renewable energy credits in the US.
So let's talk about the third option that you just mentioned. If a company in Europe, let's say, is looking to go clean, but they can't source for whatever reason as much energy or the mechanisms in their location, are they able to buy clean certificates from Chile, for example, even though it's across an ocean and offset that way? Or are the markets that they're operating in actually truly local, which is where you all come in to help them understand that dynamic?
Yeah, we definitely want to help them understand what they're driving towards and what their goals are. We have customers that say this is a global warming is a global thing, global climate change, right? And so I just want to target, we have customers that say, I just want to target the dirtiest power grid where they have the most coal and build a wind farm there, build a solar farm there, because that's going to displace the highest emission source, even if I don't have any load there at all, right? So I want to sign a contract like that. That's probably not the most common. Most commonly, folks want to follow third-party guidance, whether that's the Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, WRI has a greenhouse gas protocol. There's a science-based target initiative. So a lot of our clients including Schneider ourselves, we have a 100% renewable energy target, a science-based target, and we report to the CDP. So if you want to report, people have set up frameworks around what counts and what doesn't. And so typically it's for many of these, it's a connected power grid. So if you're buying renewable electricity, if it's feeding the same electricity grid where you're using that electricity, you're able to claim that you used zero carbon electricity in that location. So for instance, North America is a very interconnected power grid where you can trade from one region to another. And so if you were to buy renewable energy in Texas or in North Dakota, you could claim that against the load you're using in New Jersey or North Carolina or anywhere else within the country, but not Chile, because that's not really interconnected in any kind of meaningful way.
Okay, so it's almost like you have to have an interconnected link to be able to offset for a specific location. If that's the case, then the planning process, it means that you need to match not only what your current needs are, but what your expected needs are versus the opportunity on the grid. How far out do you see that process actually looking? Are customers typically coming to you to offset their existing operations, or are they coming to you and saying, hey, we actually need help because we're planning a new facility and we want to make sure that when it opens, it's all sourced with clean energy?
All of the above is the real answer to that. So, people typically want to start with operations they already have. They're buying brown power. They want to be a certain percentage green. Often they'll come in with a target or a goal, or we'll help them set that target or goal. And they'll say, I want to be 50% by 2025. And so you've got a target. And then we help them map that out globally and say, there's a few customers, and including customers of ours, big tech companies that have, real nice balance sheet, plenty of money to spend, that say, I want to be on the forefront. I want to be a leader here. And I want to source locally to all of my facilities. And I want to get to 100% right away, even if it's at a premium. But the vast majority of the companies in the world and the vast majority of our customers, the economics really matter here. The good news is renewables are cheaper in many markets around the world. So we kind of sit down with them with that map of where do they have load, what are they looking to achieve, what are their areas where you can source renewable energy in a way that's at least break even with what you'd be paying for power normally. Often you can negotiate and lock in a contract that's nominally below what you're paying today. Now, whether or not that's going to work out for you, if it's a long-term contract, right? Power markets can go up and down. So, no guarantee there. A lot of the work that we do with clients is sitting with their CFOs and their treasurers to understand what are the range of outcomes for, what are the probabilities and ranges of outcomes of power in various markets around the world, and what are those going to look like. But yeah, we'll help them map that out and say, okay, you've got these targets, these interim targets. Let's start here. Let's move to here. What does your roadmap look like? And then, critically, we help them go execute that roadmap as well.
Now, how do you actually do that? There are many different ways that you can purchase electricity. It's open market, it's a direct PPA. There's even exchanges that are popping up. Does Schneider maintain relationships with gencos, generation companies, or are you trying to just help them say, here are all of your options. We're going to help you advise and evaluate everything that's out there?
Yeah, we act as a buyer advisor. So we sit on the side of the corporate and industrial as an independent buyer advisor. So we're not trying to steer them to this particular energy service company or this particular project developer or that. So we really sit down and help them understand what their needs are. And then depending on what they're looking to do, there's different ways to go about that, right? So commonly the offsite power purchase agreement, which is a great method for a lot of our clients that have big ambitious goals that need to go big scale, but also want that additionality component, want to be able to say, my purchase is getting this new project built. When we're looking at those, There are platforms. We have a platform that we've developed with over 400 corporate and industrial buyers called the NEO Network. But what we found over time, that's more of a pre-transactional platform. We have service providers, developers, any number of different participants in this community. We host events, and it's great for education and for getting people up to speed, for understanding what are typical price ranges to expect in the market, what are new deal structures, etc. But when it comes to actually securing a transaction, if you're going to be buying a 12-year, 15-year power purchase agreement from a 100-megawatt wind farm, you might be committing $50, $100, $150 million over the course of that 12 or 15 years. And so what we found is, while the platform is great to support and to educate and to get people together, that's really a custom thing. You're not going to point and click for $150 million decision.
Yeah,
that's much more like an investment banking type relationship where you want a trusted advisor to walk you through the process, to customize it to your needs, and to be there every step of the way.
All right. So with that, help our listeners understand what type of facility size-wise. So maybe use an example or an analogy if you can. What would need a PPA with a 100-megawatt wind farm? What would need a PPA with a 50-megawatt wind farm? What would need a PPA with a 25? So as you scale up, it starts at what and it ends at X.
Yeah, so we try to approach it now that, these large scale wind farms and solar farms need a certain amount of guaranteed revenue and investment, over a period of time in order to obtain financing from banks and third parties, make it bankable. Exactly. So there's a certain threshold that they need to get that project built. So, in the US, the projects are pretty big, especially in a lot of the big deregulated markets in the, middle of the country. You get these giant wind farms that are 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt wind farm that might produce 400,000 megawatt hours a year at the 100 megawatt level, up to a gigawatt hour of a terawatt hour of electricity per year for some 220 megawatt project. So they need some pretty big energy users and some pretty big energy buyers. If you big industrial users or large retail companies with lots of locations or et cetera. Something that we've worked a lot more on is how do we aggregate customer demand? How do we go out and approach these developers that we've done many PPAs with and say, hey, maybe this isn't just one big customer, but we have a basket of smaller customers, right? That we can bring to this together to really enable more and more participants in these markets. If, with a lot of our customers, they might have dispersed load around the world where they've got a bunch of load in Europe and a bunch of load in Australia and the US. And then they've got, little bits of load in other countries or markets. And so in those cases, just purchasing the certificates in those markets is probably your best bet. Like trying to negotiate and sign a 60-page, 70-page power purchase agreement for a very small portion of energy. It's just not worth your time or the developer's time to do that. Just buying green power year over year, either from your utility or as an unbundled certificate, is a totally reasonable way to fill in those gaps.
That makes sense. And it is a very different experience than dealing with a steel production location where they've got a furnace that's running 24/7, 365 a year, or a McDonald's that has franchises across the country that have an aggregate high amount, but it's a very small draw per. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to depend on the customer. We try to design solutions that meet the customer's needs wherever they are. We certainly specialize in large global multinational companies, commercial and industrial companies, but we also have a lot of companies that are much more mid-size and medium scale, or big companies that have just a smaller amount of load in this market or that market. So it's critical that we help create solutions that work for everyone across the board.
Now, you're obviously successful in that. You've had a few really big announcements that are quite impressive recently. Let's talk about Walmart. What happened there?
Walmart is a great story. I mean, they've been a leader in sustainability and in renewable energy for many, many years. So, I think Walmart announced one of the first corporate PPAs, I want to say back in 2001, 2002. So many, many years ago. So they've always been a leader in the space. They engaged us to help them source a few PPAs for their own usage, but then the conversation just kept going from there. And they've got a Project Gigaton, which is a program that they've developed that's been running for 5-6+ years, where they're trying to engage their suppliers. You can imagine the supply chain of Walmart. It's hundreds of thousands of companies that are suppliers into Walmart, and so they've looked at their carbon footprint and they've said, wow, actually, by far, sure, we use power in our stores and our trucks, to transport. And so we've got emissions there, and they're not insignificant, and we want to address those, but really the bulk of our footprint comes from our supply chain and the products in our stores, how they're created, et cetera. And so they've been looking to engage their supply chain for many years to reduce a gigaton of emissions out of their supply chain. And so it's a voluntary program that Walmart runs. They engaged us and said, well, one of the ways that we can help our suppliers to reduce carbon emissions is renewable energy and is aggregating some of that supplier demand. Some of our suppliers are big enough and they're just off and running doing their own deals. There's many public companies have announced deals, Procter & Gamble or Johnson & Johnson or, that are Clorox, who are already doing their own power purchase agreements, their own renewables, they have their own targets. But Walmart said, how can we expand the pool? How can we encourage some folks that maybe weren't already jumping in to be a part of this and aggregate, and we give it something of a little bit of boost or encouragement for them to voluntarily participate. And so they have engaged us at Schneider to reach out, educate all of those suppliers. We have a portal on our NEO network where suppliers come in, sign up, get educated and registered, and then we aggregate those into cohorts and go out to market to secure power purchase agreements. And so what it's enabling us to do is over time open up that market to a lot of companies that never would have thought about it, never would have gone for it, or were too small, or had credit rating issues, or whatever the case may be. When you can put a bunch of them together, you can enable a lot more impact. Yeah, and so that was really Walmart's goal, and then Schneider was the right partner to help them out.
It sounds like that definitely can de-risk that opportunity for them, which is fantastic. Are you designing cohorts based on location then? I imagine, because the supply chain for a company like Walmart, it's global.
Yeah, definitely based on location and on criteria for what that company wants or needs, right? So luckily they have enough suppliers that you can design a bunch of different cohorts. We've wanted to start the program in the US, where Walmart is headquartered, right? They said, let's start it here, let's pilot it here, and then we can expand beyond that. But so right now the program is just open to companies with load in the US, and that's where we're focused now. In future years and iterations, we hope to expand that to markets around the world. And then, companies have different buying cycles. They have different drivers or requirements, different accounting frameworks. If you're a US-based company under US GAAP, or you're an international-based company under IFRS accounting, which can drive really different preferences and different outcomes and what you're looking for. So we're really trying to form and aggregate those cohorts so that there are like-minded, like gold companies to maximize the chance of a successful outcome.
Can you explain some of those differences in characteristics, not on the GAAP side, the accounting principles, but rather on how companies may evaluate whether or not renewables make sense for them, and why they may move toward that side of the equation?
It's going to depend on a number of factors. the main drivers or reasons that our companies typically cite for why are you looking into renewables, why are you doing something, is just an overall sustainability angle. Often from the top down, companies truly care about the planet. They want to be a business that's around for the next 500 years, not just the next 50. And so there's that DNA in a lot of our customers. Sometimes that's push coming from employees, coming from shareholders. We've all seen Larry Fink's letter at BlackRock, right? So that can be a big driver, or customers. So a lot of our clients, their customers are really clamoring for renewables, or their employees. So stakeholder pressure on renewables, potential concern with future regulation, or government pressure. So that's always a big part of it. The other big factor is economics. As I mentioned before, they really want to be able to sign a deal that they have a glide path to not losing money or not spending a ton of money on. The perfect storm is if you can get to 100% renewable and actually save money at it. So we're always looking for those solutions. And then for some of the bigger load customers with a bunch of load in a certain market or region, there can be a really nice hedge benefit for power prices. So, typically you can only buy power in liquid markets, 1, 2, 3 years at a time, sometimes up to 5 or 6. But, if you plan to run that factory for 30, you're exposed to rising power prices, everything beyond year 4. And so, a lot of our customers will look at it as a hedge against future rising power prices. And so then, depending on what those drivers are, is gonna drive what solution is right for them. Or maybe there's no solution right for them, or maybe not right now. Maybe they should come back later. But yeah, typically we're focusing on companies that do have a desire, at some level for some reason, to work with renewables and to become more sustainable. And then we're just helping them achieve that ambition.
How granular does it get? Can companies say, I only want to source my electricity from wind, or I only want to source my electricity from solar? Is it that, or is solar and wind and hydro all just grouped in as renewable, and it really doesn't matter where you're getting it as long as the price is right?
It's going to kind of depend on the company, but I'd say the most common refrain we would hear is any new build renewable that is going onto the grid works for me, right? So there's also third parties that will classify what counts as a renewable resource and what doesn't. So sometimes people want to follow Center for Resource Solutions in the US, which kind of categorizes these are things that count as renewables, and these are ones that don't. We don't have a lot of customers clamoring for hydro certificates from the Hoover Dam that was built decades ago, where they're really trying to support some of the newer and ongoing growth resources. But yeah, typically once you hit those criteria, people say, okay, well then within that, let's find the best economic solution, the best solution that fits where my locations are. Obviously, renewables is a very location-specific thing. Is it sunny there? Is it windy there? Like, what's going to be appropriate? And then there's also a time of use if you're looking to hedge your power. So we've got customers that are looking to that have more of a flat load profile. Maybe they're a data center type company, or they just run 3 shifts in their factory. And in that case, we'll combine a portfolio of projects where maybe you'll have some solar that's obviously producing in daylight hours, some wind that might be producing more at night and a little lower during the middle of the day, and you kind of flatten out that load curve to better match an around the clock load.
Well, what about clean baseload that's there all the time? Is that only available through a combination of battery storage, wind, solar, whatnot, or is nuclear in the mix? Do some people consider that clean? How do you approach that? Because a data center, it's 24/7, it doesn't turn off.
Yeah, it goes back to what that company's views are on what counts and what doesn't, right? So if it's, some companies might have just carbon free is their standard, in which case they'll use nuclear and they'll use the Hoover Dam solar or hydro, and they'll put everything together. Other companies say, well, we want to follow what a third party will recognize, whether that's WRI, Greenhouse Gas Protocol, whether that's CDP, whether that's Center for Resource Solutions, Greenie. So yeah, we just kind of sort of talk to the customer, understand, lay out all of the different, here's all the different third parties and certifications and what you qualify for with this or that. Here's the trade-offs in terms of cost and availability and time of use, et cetera. But yeah, to get that true baseload power, it's going to take a big variety. Probably take battery storage or hydrogen type of solution on a grand global scale for us to really get to 100% renewable. We've got a long way to go before we're there. So while we do have some clients that are really pushing for that 24/7 around the clock solution right now and pushing the envelope, a lot of the tech companies, data center companies, and we're working with them on those solutions, there's often a cost trade-off to that. And so the more common solution, or the more common outcome would be for a company to say, okay, well, if I've got this many dollars to spend, I want to make a bigger percentage of my portfolio green versus making sure that a smaller percentage is exactly 24/7.
All right. Now, which countries and which companies are doing it right? And then which countries and jurisdictions could catch up just a little bit?
One of the biggest things about the location is if you actually have retail choice. So can you, as an energy user, as a buyer, can you choose where your power comes from? Is it deregulated, or is it a fully regulated monopoly? So it can be a lot harder in the regulated monopolies to actually do anything at all. So that's kind of the starting point. I mean, even within the US, we've got plenty of deregulated markets, but we've got plenty of regulated markets as well. And it's a lot more challenging for clients in most cases to choose and guarantee 100% renewable within that regulated monopoly. Some of the utilities are doing a good job and offering a really impactful renewable product and renewable offering, but it's pretty hit or miss. So, and then you get into the economics. So where we really focus is where are there good deals and where is it possible to do? So the US has been a leader, particularly speaking to offsite renewables, because onsite is very localized based on local incentives, et cetera. For offsite PPAs, the US has been a leader for a long time. Europe is the next biggest market and the biggest growth market by far. We've seen absolute tremendous growth in Europe, where we're probably out to market for 50 plus different offsite PPAs in Europe currently. There's a whole bunch of demand from companies based in Europe for decarbonization and sustainability. And within Europe, there's certain countries that are stronger than others from an economic standpoint. So we kind of target those, the Nordics, Spain, Italy, to a lesser extent, Poland, done some deals in the UK, et cetera. And then Australia, we've done a good bit. There were government incentives in India and Mexico back in 2017 type time frame that made those really attractive. Those have gone away, so that did cooled off a little bit. Right now, Brazil is a big growth market where there's really strong opportunities for clients in Brazil as well. And we've got some clients doing pilot projects in Vietnam. So it's you kind of pivot around, where does the government incentive, where does the economic opportunity lie? And you pivot into there. And then there's some other countries that are still, it's really challenging to get a deal done. China's one we get asked about all the time. And from an offsite PPA standpoint, it's just not there yet. The mechanisms aren't there. They've just created a tracking system for certificates, which is a great first step, similar to South Korea, but it's really not there where you've got a lot of retail choice at this point.
Have you seen a bell curve of PPA sizes establish itself, so you can say, yeah, 5% are going to be 20 megawatts and above, 10% is going to fall in this trench? Where does it lay?
If you're in the US, that bell curve is probably, one standard deviation on each side, or 1.5 or something, is probably in that 20 megawatt, 15 to 20 megawatt, up to, 150, 200 megawatt range. Once you get in that 150, 200 megawatt, there's just not that many buyers. You have to be a behemoth energy user to go that big. And then once you get below that 20 threshold, we're probably looking at an aggregation solution for you. Whether it's because we've got a client already buying 150 of those 200, and then there's some slices you can take off what's left, or whether we're going out together in a cohort like the Walmart Gigaton PPA program. All right. So that's pretty typical. In Europe, the whole thing would shift down a little bit because there's just not as big of projects. You can't, other than some Nordic wind projects, you just can't build. The land is much more at a premium. You can't go as big there. And so, yeah, for Europe, you could be a smaller buyer, and then you're not going to find anything much above 100, 150 megawatts.
All right. So the last question I have for you is, you are clearly well informed. I imagine you get a great deal of your information from the NEO network itself, which is nice to have access to. But where do you get your news? You wake up every single morning and you've got Google alerts set, and you go to a few specific sites, or what's your process?
Yeah, we definitely rely on our global network of experts, right, that are in these energy markets, and there's special market updates come to the inbox all the time to understand what's going on in this market or the other market. Again, the NEO network, as you mentioned, tons of great information on there. And then, we're members of a number of third parties. OWEA and SEIA are a couple of, US-based groups. The Resource Group in Europe, the REBA Group, Renewable Energy Buyers Association Group in the US. And so we participate in a lot of these industry groups that are trying to get the word out, aggregate information, share it broadly. This is something that's going to take all of us. Schneider's obviously a big participant here, but we're not the only one, and we can't be the only one. This is a huge issue and huge undertaking that's going to take all of us. It's going to take us, competitors, developers, buyers, all working together to try to pull the oar in the same direction and move the industry forward.
And I think that's what we're seeing internationally, and through the other guests that we've had on the podcast thus far. John, this has been absolutely fantastic. Appreciate your time. John Powers, Vice President, Global Cleantech and Renewables at Schneider Electric. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Appreciate the time.
Our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men and for the progress of all people.